Okay, we're having technical difficulties, but this is the warrant and budget review information session for the annual town meeting warrant. We're going to go through the warrant. Hopefully we'll get through it. We weren't able to get it on the screen, the projector, due to incompatible technology, I guess. I'm Doug Story, the town moderator, and I'm here with Bob Guerrero, who is our chairman of the advisory committee. We've also got Alan DePrito here, who is has an article on the warrant as well. But basically, we're going to go through the warrant, and we'll go quickly on the parts that are not your parts. Bob, you can take as much time as you want on your presentation, and then Alan, you can also do your presentation. All right. That said, next Monday, 7 o'clock is the annual town meeting. Please be there early so that we can get everybody in and checked in and start on time. We actually have a relatively short warrant this year. The first article is always to accept the annual reports. Article 1, accept annual reports. And it requires a majority vote. The second article is unpaid bills for the previous fiscal years, and we do have quite a few this year. Not really a lot in money per se. It's about $10,905, but there were some late bills coming in that need to be paid. So that's Article 2. Article 3 is the operating budget for fiscal year 25. And I'm not going to read the article because I'm sure Bob's going to go over a lot of this in his presentation. But the article does read that there are monies transferred from several different locations, and then the lion's share, $29,940,000, to be raised by taxation. And then at that point, after moving that Article 3, we'll go to Bob's presentation.
Okay, I'll start with some brief introductory comments, and then we'll walk through the slides. So the first slide is the proposed operating budget for FY25, which refers to expenditures for day-to-day functions, and that's $31,139,149, increase of 6.8% over last year. The next slide is total budgeted expenditures. These are operating expenses plus state county assessments and capital expenditures. Total proposed for FY25 is $31,613,807, an increase of 8.2%. The next slide breaks out the sources of revenue. As usual, property taxes make up the vast majority of that, at about 88%. Local receipts is the second next largest bucket at 6.9%, and then you can see some of the smaller items listed in there. We are proposing using $903,831 out of free cash, and total articles that are being up for approval total $313,904. And this gives us the total amount of that same $31,613,807. Okay, the next slide is the overview of all of the expenditures. The largest portion, as usual, is the education line at about 64% of the total budget. That includes the Neshoba Regional School District and Minuteman. The next largest segment is the salary and wages in the town departments at about $4.8 million. That is about 15% of the total budget. Other town operating expenses is about $3 million at 9.3% of the budget. And then you can see the other smaller items underneath that. Okay. The next slide shows a breakout of the operating budget. Again, this is just day-to-day operations only, and shows those Education is the largest chunk at about 65% of the operating budget. Public safety is next, and you can see the breakdown of the other town departments. The next slide is the same information, just in a table now instead of a pie chart. Again, education is at the top, 20.2 million. Public safety is next at about 3.3 million. Then general government, employee benefits, public works, debt service, and it goes down from there. Okay, the next slide describes a few of the articles that are related to some of the town finances, and I just wanted to highlight a few of them here. Article number 5 proposes to replenish the stabilization fund. We used 345,000 of this last year to repair the roof of the public safety building. So we've committed to replenishing that stabilization fund over 3 years. This 115,000 is the first of 3 payments. Article 6 increases the FY24 reserve fund by 138,000. The reserve fund is used for unanticipated expenses. There's been a lot of pressure on the reserve fund this year, and we have exhausted it. This 138,000 will allow us to continue to operate and pay some of those unanticipated expenses through the rest of FY24. And finally, Article 11 fully funds the Forbush Mill Road Bridge Replacement Project. The next slide describes our financial policy targets. These are not mandatory, but these are targets that we have attempted to achieve every year. The first says that we would like to achieve a certified free cash of 3 to 5% of our total budgeted expenditures from the prior fiscal year. And we are at 5.4%, so that is actually even above our target, which is great. We would like to maintain a free cash balance of at least $350,000 going into FY25. This budget maintains that free cash balance at just over $350,000. Our next policy target says that we'd like to maintain our overall reserves, which includes free cash, the stabilization fund, and the overlay reserve, between 6 to 10% of our operating budget. If Article 5, replenishing the stabilization fund, passes, we will be at 5.1%. That's below our target, but again, the stabilization fund is planned to be replenished over 3 years, and if we continue on that path, then next year we'll be back within our target of 6 to 10%. We'd like to keep our debt service payments at no more than 5 to 7% of our general fund revenues, and they're at 3.9%, which is great. And finally, our goal is always to fund 100% of our OPEB annual required contribution. Traditionally, we have been able to do that. Unfortunately, this year, in order to get our budget successfully to balance, we are only able to fund 9% of our required contribution for FY25. We fully intend to return to 100% next year, as we have been for many years. Our OPEB fund currently has sufficient funds to cover about 8 to 9 years of our liability expenses at the current rate of expenditures, so we have some time to correct this. And finally, the last slide are the estimated tax rates for FY25. And I need to emphasize that these are just estimates. The finals numbers won't be out until December. But based on what our assessors are seeing, the average single family value will increase about 9.4%. We think the tax rate will go down a little bit to about $15.95 per thousand. So given that, the average single family tax bill can be expected to increase by about $944. And again, these are our estimates. Final numbers come out in December. That's it for me.
Okay, so that is the advisory presentation on the budget. The next thing that we go to every year is a presentation by the Neshoba Regional School District for their portion of the budget, which is, as Bob just told us, 63%? Something like that.
64%.
Obviously, the biggest number in our budget. So these are their slides from the school district. They'll be presented by a representative of the school district at the annual town meeting. So I'm just going to, they've only got 3 slides here. I'm just going to show them real quickly. Showing that an operating budget change of 3.52% and a total budget change of 6.71%. There are some capital projects in here and some capital debt. And then, of course, the big one being the new high school construction, which will begin showing up when? Next year?
It's in the first
in this
portion of
budget?
that is in this budget.
Okay, so we're already starting to pay for it.
Already starting to see it.
Good to know. And then this shows the assessment for Bolton, for the operating budget, capital debt assessment, and the total assessment, with a change of 7.65%. Okay, so that is the operating budget article, and then what we do every year during the actual town meeting is that I will go through the entire budget on the back of your warrant. The last 10 pages or so are the budget by department. I read the department totals, and we'll go through several pages and then ask if there's any questions about any departments. So that gives everyone an opportunity to sort of follow along. And then if they have a specific question on a specific expenditure or a department, they're able to ask it at that point in time. And of course, this is all before we voted the article. I'm not going to do that tonight, but that's how we process this. And then once we've gone through the entire budget, we then have any other discussion or other debate, and then have a vote on the budget. And then after Article 3, we go to Article 4, which is spending limits of revolving fund accounts. I don't know if you have anything on this, Bob.
No, we have to do this every year.
Yeah, so there's certain accounts that have to be replenished every year, such as software services, EMT cadet, tax title, senior band, parks and rec, advanced life support. And the select board will speak to that. I think there are some changes there. Article 5 is replenish the stabilization fund, which Bob did just talk about. So this is one of those articles to put money back into that fund. Article 6 is replenish the reserve fund. Again, Bob just spoke to that. $138,000 to the reserve fund. Article 7 is special revenue fund for opioid settlements. Starting to set up an account with a pretty small, modest amount. To be held until the use is identified. Article 8 is to amend the code of Bolton. This is put forth by the animal control officer, and there are some changes to the way the bylaw that discusses animal at large. Some of the wording is being changed to make it more relevant, and what the animal control officer can do on any animals that are at large on our town streets.
I had a question about this. Have any other towns done this? I mean, this sounds like we're authorizing the animal control officer to go onto private property.
No, it doesn't do that at all.
Then what does it do?
All it does is says that the animal control officer can act if animals are at large in places other than a road. So the current reading of the bylaws now says that if an animal is at large in a road, the animal control officer can take some action. The change will say at large in other places. So In other words, if an animal's at large on someone else's property, the animal control officer can take some action. It doesn't mean go on the property. It means can address the homeowner. You're not allowed to have animals at large on someone else's property. That's all it does.
So I was at one of the select board meetings when they discussed this, and I know this will come up and there will be questions, and it will be answered by people who know this better than I do. But it's not an attempt to allow you to go on a private person's property. But if someone's animal is on someone else's property, or let's say they're on the town common, the way the bylaw is written right now, the animal control officer can't do anything unless the animal is in the road. That's the only place they have authority. And I guess there's been incidences where they needed to.
Do people opt in? Or do you opt in by calling and saying there's animals in my yard? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, someone would have to, for the animal control officer to be called, there'd have to be a complaint, yeah. And it could be the police, are driving down the road and they see some cows walking through the road. I mean, I say cows, there's more likely sheep in this town, or horses, but I've seen it, it has happened. So that will be, I'm sure there'll be questions and they'll be answered a little bit better than that, but it's not to go on your private property, but it's to give the animal control officer what they need, the power they need when animals are loose and need to be, corralled or whatever you want to call it. Article 9 is an amendment to the code, Division 1, Part 1, Chapter 1, General Provisions. This is brought forth by the Department of Public Works, and it relates to the disposal of waste at the transfer station. The wording used to say, put your sticker on the bag, and now we don't have stickers, we have bags. So they want to get the wording appropriate for what you're supposed to do, which is bring your trash in one of the bags that has been purchased that then is correct to be disposed of. Article 10 is an amendment of the Wetlands Code bylaw, Division 1, Part 2. And I know that there's a couple of slides after this from the Conservation Commission, who would be the ones presenting this. And they did a nice succinct summary here, but to incorporate climate resistance into purpose and jurisdiction, to increase the riverfront area from 200 to 225 feet, to clarify the adjacent upland resource area, to increase no disturb zones from 25 to 40 feet on new lots, and 25 to 30 feet on existing lots. So this is, a pretty significant change in the existing bylaw, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about this one too. They do show some maps here to try and show the difference between 25 and 30 and 40, and how basically it, increases the area that is no disturb, which means you can't do anything in it. So that's Article 10. Article 11 is the Forbush Mill Road replacement, bridge replacement. And this is brought forth by the Department of Public Works and provide a sum of $128,778 to fund the construction phase engineering services for the replacement of the failed culvert at Forbush Mill Road with a bridge and the transfers. And there's a bunch of different transfers here, so I'm sure they'll go over that in detail. And they wanted to be sure that it was clear that it was construction and engineering. So in the warrant, it actually says construction phase engineering services. I don't know if that's just a typo, that it was missing that one word. If that's the case, I won't even require that we vote it as an amendment, because I have the ability to say that that was the intended meaning of this, and I don't think anyone was confused by it. But I'll get clarification from them on that and we'll decide. So it would either be voted as an amendment or it'll just be accepted as the main article, because I think that's what they meant and what it read like, but it just was missing a word.
You mean the word "and" or something to
Yeah,
fund the
as far
construction?
as I can tell, I think
and
it's
engineering?
only that the word "and" was not in there, so. Okay, and then Article 12 is the citizens petition, which is your,
Yeah.
correct? So I've got your screens, and you just tell me when.
Yeah, sure. So can I ask a question? Will these slides be available on the website somewhere so people can see?
They already are.
Oh, they already are?
Yep, they were posted today.
Awesome, awesome.
And, if there's anything on here that isn't.
Yeah, yeah.
We should have done verbatim what you gave us. I didn't change
Sure,
anything.
Sure. it'll be fine.
So, but if there is anything, let us know tomorrow. We can still change it.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So that's the wording of it. So let's go to the next slide to give you an idea of what's going on. So in the upper right-hand corner, that QR code goes to these slides exactly. The one in the lower left is information about this particular slide. So this one just kind of gives you an idea. If you don't pay your taxes, the town can take your property. But this kind of gives you an idea that these are optional. The town may, and the town asks the court. And so, I'm sorry, I'm a little closer to see it.
Sorry.
Supreme Court has found that the tax lien foreclosure law is similar to Massachusetts are unconstitutional. So we're in a situation where what was done and what continues to be done is a problem. So property owners will be owed compensation. So we go to the next slide. Supreme Court itself. So when the taxing authority keeps the excess or surplus funds from the foreclosed sale, the authority is maybe taking. In Massachusetts right now, there's no opportunity for the taxpayer to recover this excess value. Supreme Court, the highest court, said that property rights are fundamental, cannot be erased by state statute that redefines them out of existence. So we're in a little bit of a quandary here. So go to the next one. So Supreme Court, Tyler versus Hennepin, says things like Massachusetts are unconstitutional. Just last week, the Superior Court out in Springfield said the same thing. Massachusetts ruling. Legislature still hasn't changed the rules yet. So we have a problem. And then we see here also, just a quote from down there, when a whole tract of land was sold, when a small part of it would have sufficed, they've taken too much and exceeded the authority. We go to the next one. The Attorney General, Massachusetts, said the property owner suffered a violation, Fifth Amendment rights, when he took the property without just compensation. They can sue in, that's federal court there. No personal liability for some of these actions. Mass legislature knows, but they still haven't done anything. It's not sufficient to have a statute that authorizes taking and then a possibility for compensation later proceeding. We go to the next one. Back to the idea that the town has made choices, the town has choices, and there's plenty of things we can do that didn't need to be what's happening here. So town council last year said town meeting cannot supersede state law. Town employees cannot be compelled to deviate from state law. Well, they don't need to. All these things were optional. We don't have to withhold the permits. We can have repayment plans that are more generous than the mandatory ones from the state. We can sell the smallest undivided part instead of selling the whole thing. But to the main point, foreclosing the rights of redemption at all is optional. And in fact, right now, vacating that decision to do so is also optional for the town with no risk, because it will be as if it never happened. All the taxes would be as they would have been right up until now. And the town will still get every penny they needed out of it. But they'll get out of the situation where, like we go to the next slide, if the property isn't sold, as some properties have not been sold yet, say you had a debt of $50,000 you wanted to collect, property is worth $550,000, the town now owes $500,000 to the owner, and possible another $500K in legal costs. So we're talking about $1 million to collect a $50,000 debt. That 20-1 ratio is not something I'd want to invest in. The money would be spent without any approval at town meeting. The back taxes and future tax on the property would never be recovered if the property is not sold. The only legitimate interest of the town is to recover the back taxes and the other cost and interest. We go to the next one. So the idea, the summary is in your warrant. Everyone got one paper copy. You can read exactly what it says. I'll just give you the highlights. Municipalities will be held liable for the equity taken and the legal costs for ongoing state and federal actions necessary to recoup the equity. A yes vote would provide an alternative, working with the owners to create reasonable repayment and obtaining full and fair market value. And then, if the town wishes to retain the foreclosed tax property, it will follow the same procedures it would for any other property put into public use, come before the town meeting, and we get a 2/3 vote on it. I'm not sure where the money's gonna come from to pay this equity back to the homeowners. So, the article says stop doing it until the state comes up with a better solution and work into some mediation in any situations the town's already in. I didn't know if you would be here if there are any questions, but pretty much the gist of things.
Okay, thank you for presenting your slides, and I think it's good for people to see this ahead of time. So there'll be a vote on that. I'm sure there'll be lots of discussion. And then there will be, the final article is to authorize our town election, which we always hold 1 week after our town meeting, to fill each of these positions that are needed to be filled. So we always encourage everyone to remember to plan to vote a week from the town meeting date and to show up and vote, because we do need that. And then we end the meeting with a motion to close, and that one's usually pretty unanimous. Anyway, we will be using the remote counters that we've been using the last couple of meetings. They're working really well. Every town that uses them finds that it is something that people really appreciate, they like, they get to see that the votes are up there, they see the numbers, and there have been no problems whatsoever, so we will continue to do that. I do like to do a couple of votes by voice just to retain that old tradition, but that's it. 13 articles this year. Should be pretty good meeting.
Predictions? Any predictions on how long we're gonna go?
Predictions? I think it'll be one of our shorter ones. Let's put it that way. And, that's okay. We had a big one in the fall that we spent a lot of time on. So anyway, that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. And Bob, thanks for coming in. Alan, thanks for presenting your slides.
Thank you.
These will be on the town website that people can go and look at them. If they want to go back and look at anything, and then be looking for the Bolton Common was supposed to be delivered. I know I got one 2 days ago to every household in Bolton with a copy of the warrant in it. So be sure to bring that to town meeting, and be sure to get there early enough so we can get everybody checked in. Thank you very much. Thanks, Nikki.
Great.